So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've had a very exciting beginning, to some extent, a little serious note. And that is the way I guess we are heading in this country for. What I like about the concept that Dr. Samir Kochar has put up, I remember visiting a number of think tanks throughout the world and trying to participate in the process of thinking what to do and what to plan. And I think that is indeed a direction in which we need a little more. We need to plan and to plan ahead of time. Where we have reached a very good target. We are no longer in the underdeveloped stage. We are in the developing stage at the least and almost heading towards developed somewhere at the bottom, maybe. The third largest economy, I think now when we go around the world and in the country, we find everybody is actually looking at us in terms of what we have achieved and what we need to look at. I think we've gone through periods of hard times. And I think those are the lessons we come from. And that is the vision that I was talking about. I know I'm speaking about the sting of retrospective taxation and tax activism, a very dry but a very high subject, because ultimately it has one of the maximum implications for life, for business, for revenue, for the economy to grow. That's the whole context that I was aiming for here, even though we've heard the erudite speakers of, lastly, Mr. Bharatlal, who has now turned into a big philosopher. We have seen him go through phases. Sanjay, who I've known since Jharkhand times, as he was saying rightly that Bihar and Jharkhand was always, I think, a little higher up, but Bihar has also steamed up ahead in terms of progress. Dr. Rao, who is extremely erudite on the subject and has been part of this GST implication. I must remember the time when GST was actually being imposed and we were heading on a political front also and addressing this issue. Honestly speaking, there was so much opposition to it. The opposition being that this is going to create hurdles, it will create obstacles, you will not be able to meet it. So what do you do? But ultimately, from what I understand, I think the revenue generated out of GST has justified, more than justified its existence, as much as the digitalization of the world has, as much as the demonetization has. So each of these features has led to it. So why I speak in this context on retrospective taxation, recently there have been a number of developments, and I actually ask myself this question. We are a country which is developing. We've had a history of justification of retrospective taxation. It is permissible under the Constitution, under the judgments, Article 245, Article 246, Article 265. Each of them give us the benefit of having the provision of retrospective taxation. But has it actually paid off? Has it actually resulted in a benefit to us? Or is it a question mark today? It is a question mark, and that is the issue. The recent judgment, all of you would have seen MADA, the royalty judgment, and the imposition of tax, and that too retrospective tax from 2005. Sanjay, you are equally involved in these states, in particular Jharkhand, in particular was party to this, and the amount of revenue that was sought to be generated from these companies. So what is the problem with retrospective taxation? The problem with retrospective taxation is it started in British times, 18th century. It was ultimately meant to generate revenues for the forces and the Britishers. So we were supposed to be paying, and that is the background of generation of not only taxing but also revenue generation and retrospectivity. But when MADA recently came, now MADA has been with the 9-judge bench. Now, as all of us know, all of us are really part of this heavy literary and academic circles that we belong to. But MADA actually came out with a judgment on saying, aside from saying that royalty is not tax, well, that doesn't matter to our conversation here. But the fact is that tax could be imposed from 2005. Now, I have done work. Let me say I'm a mining company. I'm a mining company. I generate revenue. I do my planning. I plan on the basis of what I need to pay out in terms of not only workers, employment, all the infrastructure that I utilize, but what taxes I need to pay. So my planning is based upon that premise. Now, if you have an imposition of trillions of amounts, which of course mining does generate, I know state needs revenue. I know states need development. But prospective taxation is one thing and retrospective taxation is another. And I think that is the forefront of what I was really considering at this point when I look at it. And the second context, which of course all of us know is the issue which is coming up today, is the online gaming industry. Now that not only was online gaming throughout the world, it was a very popular sport. And it's another matter, there's another story to this. There's game of skill and game of chance. That's another aspect, because I do believe seriously that it is a game of skill, and whether indeed it should come within the purview of the same consideration. Now today, 28% retrospective taxation has been levied on online gaming, whether it is considered a game of skill or a game of chance. Even that distinction has been done away with. The question of what benefit online gaming industry can get, and I'm not entering into moral subjects. I'm saying either it's permissible or not permissible. If it is permissible, the question of tailoring it down or petering it down is a question that we are actually addressing. So you have both these games. First it was 18%, and there was a question of game of skill not coming within that, but today it has. The generation, what I understand of online gaming industry, something like $5 trillion in 2025 is the kind of revenue that this industry was likely to generate. But today with this imposition, what we are having is the crucial questions. Do I have a right of business? Do I have a fundamental right under 19(1)(g) to actually practice? Can the state impose a disproportionate taxation structure like 28%, which is phenomenally high? Dubai, for example, there's the tax-free zones. So what is anybody going to do when you have an option of business in this country or in any other country? You would put it up in some other country. And today, with the world being a virtual world, you have facility, you can sit somewhere and actually operate out of somewhere else and actually have the benefit of that. So when we want our revenues to increase, we want our fundamentals to increase, we want our financing to increase, we want our people to prosper, we want our people to have better education that Sanjay is saying, we want people to have better rights that Bharat Lal was talking about. In that context, the generation of money ultimately involves, we allow business to prosper. I'm not saying that you will not have tax. Every country needs a tax, and definitely we need to support ourselves. But to have a disproportionate tax has been frowned upon even by the Supreme Court. In CIT Vatika and the other judgments, we don't want to specifically name them. We'll sit down with those detailed discussions at some point. But from Chota Bhai to CIT Vatika, disproportionate income taxation is frowned upon. Fairness is needed. Public interest. Is it in consonance with legitimate public interest? Is it in consonance with its object? Is it in consonance with the larger public purpose at all of the agencies for which we are creating it? So what is the public purpose? Yes, the normal purpose is what? Government needs money. States need money. In the royalty matter, ultimately it was the states were saying, everybody is getting money, but I am not getting money. And I need to develop my state. And yes, we do have a background of Bihar, and not as much Jharkhand, but Bihar a little more, for prosperity to reign in by sometimes infusion of funds. So, well, the point is to find a balance. The balance is what we are looking for. Online betting is the crucial question at hand. The Supreme Court is right now seized of the matter, and I think about 140 odd betting online companies are facing this wrath of discussing whether retrospective taxation is permissible, plus the amount, plus the fundamental rights. And I think we will see the light of day. But what I do see is another front. We are very interested in foreign investment. Obviously we are. All of us are. Even though today India is commanding. I am not asking for it, but yes, it is part and parcel of my gross revenue and my income making process. In FDI, if you look at the question of retrospective taxation, let's look at Vodafone and Cairn. There are two examples where billions and trillions of money was spent not only in litigation, right up to the Permanent Court of Arbitration where we lost, but the question of, what was it? It was corporate restructuring and of the question of taxation on assets in or outside India. So the long and short of it, ultimately you have imposition of retrospective taxation, ultimately reversed in 2021 by a government, the Finance Act of 2021, and we had to pay back trillions of money, but the question is not that. You need investor faith. And you need investor faith not only for foreigners, you need investor faith for India. For any business to prosper, there has to be certainty, predictability, and not these features which take you out. Why did they succeed in these PCA cases, the Permanent Court of Arbitration? They succeeded on fair and equitable grounds. It should be fair, it should be equitable. You can't impose something which I today cannot garner. There's another aspect of indirect taxes that it passes on to consumers. Can you levy it retrospectively? Because the consumers are gone. They have benefited for whatever they had to benefit. I can't really impose it. Supreme Court has even said that that is good enough. It doesn't matter whether it can pass on or not. The nature remains the same. So we are standing at the crossroads of these discussions to say, should I have retrospective taxation at all? Let me plan for prospective. Let me not go into retrospective. And plan well ahead of time. I think our planning process, all of you are the planners. I'm only addressing the planners more than anybody else. I do believe that we can plan in advance. If at all it has to be retrospective, then the proportion of it definitely cannot put out business altogether out of the line. It cannot be that the business cannot operate or it makes it unprofitable. Of course, there's another aspect of whether the taxation should be on the full betting amount or the GGR as it is called. And that I think globally, in fact, it has been GGR. So why should you have it on that aspect? All these issues, as I said, fortunately or otherwise, are before the courts. But aside from the courts, I think we as government, as planners, as citizens of this country, do need to get our position together. If we could do it in 2021, but why suffer the consequences of something and then do? So if it can be a conjoined effort of the third pillar of the constitution and of democracy, and the first pillar, which is the government, to act in consonance together to consider where this aspect should go, how we should quantify it, should it go retrospective or not. It leads to loss of employment, it leads to loss of revenue, it leads to loss of development of cities, it leads to tier 2 and tier 3 cities actually going down because you can't compete, it leads to smaller players being thrown out, it leads to startups not being able to function. And incidentally, India has done wonderfully well on startups. We started it with a big bang, if I might use that expression, on startups. And I think innovation is so important for us ourselves. Every day we are innovating. You see digitalization. I was yesterday coming back from the airport. I was just seeing how 4 new businesses that started from existing businesses on, let us say, services of this is NCAM services or the Pranam services. Each of these features is actually lending to generation of business, employment, and potential for the country. That's what we want to head to. So if retrospective taxation itself not only is a sting, it's a big sting. We do need to look at it very closely and put our players together so that we can bring back issues into focus. And I hope that all of you will participate in this action as a society, as citizenry, as government, and as people, and as human people, as Bharat Lalji would say. Thank you very much.